Hello and welcome to Soul Clinic with Chang. And I felt shifted again this morning. And I have gone through so many shifts, even in the past couple months. I don't feel the same anymore. I mean, these days I have been, past couple days, I have been watching some, on my YouTube feed, I've been watching some of the videos on MBTI types or Myers-Briggs. And I used to be very obsessed about that model to learn more about my own personality and how others operated as well. And so, and that was about, 10 years ago. And since then, after I dug really deep into that topic for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years after that, it got very mainstream in Korea, where I live. And because I studied in the US, I first learned about the model in that personality typing model in English. And in Korea, well, how it became mainstream, like Koreans made contents and YouTube videos in the Korean language. And because of the cultural difference, it feels a little bit different, the quality of the information. And I never just approached the Myers-Briggs as a personality typing thing, meaning in order to categorize people into boxes. And in that system, there are 16 different personalities. And according to different people, you may stay one type all your life, or your type may change. But I don't know which between the two is right. But still, I never liked the idea of using any tool or model to narrow down a unique being. And that's why these days I stopped using Myers-Briggs, although it can be very useful on your journey, depending on where you are. But nowadays I use human design, which starts on the basis that everyone is unique. Okay? So, but because of how viral and memeified, if that's a word, a lot of the Myers-Briggs contents in the Korean culture has become, it could be fun to just watch. And it was kind of cute to remind myself how my own type is described in the popular culture in Korea. Okay. And that reminded me of how just far I've come from that stereotype. So I challenge you to, well, it may be obvious on people who are watching me what type I am, but I challenge you to find out which type I am. And although I could remember while I was watching the videos describing my type, I could remember how I used to be like that and how I would seem to other people like that. These days, how I operate even my inner world is so much richer than the stereotyped, or boxed in personality type that they describe. And it's funny, part of, I think, why it became so popular, although as a personality type, because there are 16, it's not a small number. It's not like 4 or 5, but there are 16 different types. It may be difficult to for everyone to digest all the different like contents, but even then, it became pretty famous because I think, well, number one, it is pretty accurate, and that's why I was at one time very deep into it. And the reason why it is accurate is exactly because people are so much already boxed in to what the personality type model predicts that they act and think like. I'm taking a pause because I don't know if I want to go into the how that personality type model actually operates, MBTI or Myers-Briggs, as is more often talked about in the US. Although it seems like, well, another reason why I didn't really like how it was treated mainstream. It focused on the differences. And of course, it's the first step, especially as a culture, an Asian culture, that can be very homogenizing as the Korean culture could be. It shows how one of the 16 personalities is different from all the other 15 types. And that is the first step in individuation, to understand how you are different. Yet, we are not really different. We are all one, as I've been saying in many other videos. But what's interesting is that the one source is also the source of uniqueness, the source of individuality. So what makes us all one makes us all unique. And uniqueness is just, it means there is only one of you, not that you fall into one of the 16 unique types. I mean, if we divide 8 billion people now, in human beings living on Earth now, to 16, it's 500 million, right? 500 million per each type. If we assume that all types are divided equally, which is not the case in practice, but still. 500 million, that's a lot of people. And 1 out of 500 million, not really, it's so far from unique, okay? So, the nuances that the macro, I would like to call, personality types like the Myers-Briggs system could miss in actually predicting what the individual is like. It's actually part of the system. If you go deeper into the system, it's not just a collection of 4 words, not four characters. Excuse me. So each personality type, if you don't know the MBTI system, or the Myers-Briggs types. Each type, each one of the 16 types, the name it consists of 4 letters, 4 alphabet letters. So for example, ENTP is one of the 16 types. And each one of the 4 letters is either one between the two. So each letter, each position could have two options. So that's what makes it 16 in total. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, or 2 to the fourth power equals 16. But much more than how it is, how it could be perceived by the general public. It's not just a dichotomy between the two. And what is interesting is that I am noticing how most people approach Myers-Briggs is how I've been talking about the duality, or the two extremes of the logical minds, how it always swings between the two extremes, and how it thinks that the world is dualistic. And most people would think Myers-Briggs, it just indicates which one you are of the two opposite spectrums. It literally gives you 4 options to choose between two extremes. So the first letter, for example, is introvert versus extrovert. So I, or E for short. And the other ones, sensing versus intuitive, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. And so, for example, one of the popular memes is the thinking versus feeling. That indicates how, well, that is supposed to mean to the public how you mainly make decisions. Are you more of a thinking person, meaning you tend to be logical in decision making? Or are you a feeling person, meaning you take in like human relationships into the picture, how you and other people may feel? And that is a very, very simplistic version of explaining that function, thinking versus feeling, or the decision-making function, as it's sometimes called. And it's not just that simple. It's not just that dualistic. So just because you have a T in your personality profile doesn't mean you don't have feelings, and vice versa. And I have a T. I am a T. Well, I am not a T. The personality group that I belong to has a T in its label. And what have I been emphasizing for all these like 40 somewhat videos in my channel so far? Feeling. You have to feel. You have to feel. You gotta feel. And even I've been saying that you have to make feeling a central portion, a centerpiece of your decision-making process. But I am supposed to be the non-feeling but thinking personality. And that's part of the reason why I described like these typings as once useful but not anymore. I've outgrown this. And the Myers-Briggs system, when you go real deep about it, into it, it actually is not just 4 letters, but 8 different, what is called cognitive functions. And each of the 16 types have the same 8 cognitive functions, but the order is all different for the 16 types. So we all have the same cognitive functions, whatever that means. I'm not gonna define it in this video. But for example, to give you an example what a cognitive function is, I just described the dichotomy between thinking and feeling. But the thinking and feeling part, they can either be extroverted or introverted, meaning externally oriented or internally oriented. So 4 of the 8 cognitive functions is extroverted thinking and introverted thinking, and extroverted feeling and introverted feeling. But those 4 we all have in our profile, and we all use the same 4 of the 8 cognitive functions, but in different order. So just the order of how we use the 8 cognitive functions, the hierarchy, the order 1 through 8, or the most frequently used, or the most highly developed, just because you have used that the most, use that function the most throughout your life. But number 1 through 8, that order is different, but collectively we all use the same 8 functions. At the core level of the Myers-Briggs personality type, which it was actually originally designed by the great psychologist Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, who had many groundbreaking contributions to modern psychology. And when Jung first designed it, it was all about cognitive functions, not the 4 letters. Now it's how it is used in the modern age. And so what happened to me, this is what came to me while watching and remembering how I used to be like that, but not anymore. I defy being boxed into a single type these days. I realize I have been developing the less used cognitive functions. Okay, so now I have the lower, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, those functions I have been developing. And that goes against my own personality, and even developing those lower ranked functions may even make me look like I'm a totally different type, because that's how other types have those functions at a more higher rank. And so the deeper you go into Myers-Briggs, or the conclusion that I got, is that everyone has access to the gifts of each of the 16 personalities, because it's just a matter of developing those lesser used functions. Although, of course, it won't come to you naturally. But if we side with the contention that the typing may change over your life, that means even the lesser used, that means it's not inherent. It is not predetermined, and it is changeable. even the order of how much of the different functions you use. Well, it's most likely to me a mixture of nature and nurture. So maybe the top two cognitive functions, which is like the defining, because of how there are rules of how each personality type has those those 8 cognitive functions ordered. The top two is it defines the rest of the order. Once you know the top two, numbers 3 through 8 is defined automatically by the top two. So that much could be nature. That much could be inherent. But the other ones, I personally believe, is attainable by anyone and everyone. And so you can enjoy all of the benefits of all of the types once you first make your mind that you are not boxed in by a typing system. You are much more than that. You are limitless. Personality is a nice way to categorize maybe the general public, but when we come to the individual level, the usefulness of any model for me is how much it helps you to go beyond the limits predicted by the model. So that's how I eventually use all the systems, including the Myers-Briggs, MBTI, and the Enneagram, which is another of the typing system that I once studied very deeply. I liked both of those systems because they showed me where I was rigid, where I was stuck, so to speak, in terms of habitual ways of thinking and behaving, and showed me how to get out of it, showed me how to transcend my own type. And of course, because nowadays there are so many different sources or people talking about the same system, some of them may be less enlightened in that. Some of them may be, as I described, how memeified a lot of the contents in Korea around the MBTI system has become. Like, if you just remain on the level of consuming memes, of course it would give you little more than just a transient laugh, short-lived one. But any model or system can help you shortcut your understanding around the subject. But in the long run, it may become the very shackle that confines your level of understanding and thinking and behaving, even feeling. So that was my short take on Myers-Briggs or personality types and how you actually use it in the way that benefits you as much as possible. And I think that's it for today's message, and I'll see you in the next one.